Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Seeds and Weeds podcast, brought to you by Small House Farm. Join us as we talk with gardeners, foragers, herbalists, chefs, and community activists to explore the many ways that plants impact our cultures and cuisines, our history, and our future. I'm your host, Bevin, and this is Seeds and Weeds. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to be learning all about lavender with our new friend, Terry Vesci, who is co-owner of Pine Creek Canyon Lavender Farm in Pine, Arizona. Now, Terry's going to be sharing some info on how to grow and harvest lavender, the best cultivars for culinary and medicinal uses, some of her favorite ways to use lavender, and some tips for us to help us overwinter our lavender plants. And Terry knows her stuff, too. She and her husband grow thousands of lavender plants on their farm in Arizona, and she's the author of the brand new book, The Lavender Companion. Here at Small House Farm, I'm really starting to feel that seasonal transition. You know, my event schedule's starting to wind down. All I got left on the calendar now is just a few herbal tea tasting workshops. In the garden, it's pretty much put to bed. The garlic, already planted. Everything's pretty well wrapped up for the season. You know, we're still busy cleaning, packaging seeds, and we've been getting all the new varieties listed over on the website. So if you're looking for some unique and interesting varieties to grow next year, you might want to check out what we're offering. We got lots of cool beans, tomatoes, peppers. We got herbs and flowers. The website, of course, is smallhousefarm.com, but I'll put that link down in the show notes, too, if you want to check it out. You know, processing seeds, it's already got me looking forward to next spring. And, you know, we're busy booking events for next spring already, too. I'm going to be speaking at some really cool home and garden shows next year. And we've got something very exciting happening in March, but we're not going to get into that just yet. Honestly, with the season wrapping up and all the spring preparations that are already happening, I have to keep reminding myself to, slow down and enjoy what's happening right now. With winter approaching, you know, this is my off season. This is the season of rest and reflection, right? It's our opportunity to recharge, to be dormant. So I'm really trying to be mindful of that. It's hard for me to sit still. You know, I'm always planning out whatever's happening next, looking ahead to the next big thing or whatever. You know, I kind of have to do that, like with this podcast or with booking speaking engagements or publishing books. You know, it's always that's that long game. And I know that that's important, but I think it's just as important that we try to also focus on the moment that we're in. We're all working really hard to build the lives that we want to live. So we have to remember to take the time to enjoy that life, you know, to sit down and have a cup of tea, just soak it all in. That's something I got to remind myself almost every single day, right? Lately I've really been into kayaking. We got a couple of kayaks and we'll take them down the river, take a little trip, you know. I mean, maybe just like an hour or so, but man, there's just something so peaceful about it. When you're out there on the river, you know, it's just you and the water, the wind, the trees. There's no email, there's no internet, none of that, right? It's just the moment. Now, before we jump into my conversation with Terry, I just want to say big thank you to our community on Patreon. The support of our Patreon community is what gives us the opportunity to produce the podcast. And in return for their support, our patrons enjoy a wide range of benefits like seasonal herb boxes, free books, heirloom seeds, exclusive content, and even sometimes special mini episodes of the podcast. So thanks to all of our new and returning members, including Rebecca Stoles and Jacqueline Cross. If you're interested in supporting the show, you can find the link to our Patreon down in the show notes, of course, or at our website, which is seedsandweedspodcast.com. Terry Vesci is the co-owner of Pine Creek Canyon Lavender Farm in Pine, Arizona, which welcomes thousands of visitors every year and includes a successful online business. Vesci leads the Pine Creek Canyon Lavender Farm Cooking and Baking School, where she teaches hands-on classes about cooking with lavender. Terry's joining us on the show today to talk about her new book, The Lavender Companion. Hello, Terry. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
I am so happy to be here. I cannot tell you, I love your podcast.
Oh, I appreciate that. You know, I'm so happy to have you here as well, and I really want to dig into that new book of yours, The Lavender Companion. But before we get into it, could you just tell our listeners a little bit about your background and the work that you do?
Yeah, you bet. So I'm actually a political lawyer, and I have spent most of my life working on political campaigns. And recently, well, I guess about 10 years ago, my husband Rick and I moved to the little town of Pine, Arizona. It's about 5,600 feet in elevation. And while renovating our old historic farmhouse, we decided that we should grow something in order to help out a little bit with the finances of restoration. So we became lavender farmers. So from political law to lavender farming, it was quite a jump.
It does sound like quite a jump. So I was looking at Pine Creek Canyon Lavender Farm online, and it looks like just an absolute beautiful place there. So could you tell us a little bit more about the farm and the cooking school that you have there?
So our farm actually is an old Mormon pioneer farm, early 1870s, and we just feel so blessed.
And then you also have a cooking school there at the Lavender Farm?
Oh, right. Yes. In fact, it's a Bob's Red Mill sponsored lavender cooking and baking school. And I think it's probably the only one in the world. We also have a lavender culinary test kitchen. We develop a lot of recipes here and our line of lavender foods and spices. And we just think it's so fun introducing people to the flavors and smells and textures of lavender.
Now, do you have a culinary background, or is this something that sort of grew along with the farm as it grew?
Actually, way back in the, oh my gosh, probably mid-70s, I became really interested in preserving foods. So I do have formal education in home foods preserving, and am a master food preserver under the UC California food system.
Now, I saw on your website that you've got something like 5,000 lavender plants at your farm. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think now it's closer to about 6,000.
Holy smokes. Put that in perspective for us. So like how much lavender flower would you be able to harvest from 6,000 plants?
Well, I'll tell you, on Lavender Harvest Day, which is usually the first week in July, we feel like it's about 1 million. But in truth, it's we figure about 4 to 6 lavender bundles per plant times 6,000. And that's what we then bring up. And we have a huge volunteer corps. And they in turn come and wrap those bundles up with a rubber band. We put a paper clip in them to be hung until they're really dry, which is awesome because in Arizona, we don't have the trouble that some people have around the country because we've got really nice, great drying weather. So our bundles of lavender, they just dry so quickly and so fresh and so full of color.
So am I understanding this correctly? Are you telling me that you guys are harvesting from 6,000 plants by hand?
You know what? That's exactly right. One of the things that we do is so much is culinary lavender. And so you see these great big huge farms, Mona, Utah, if any of your listeners have ever been there, the headquarters for one of the big essential oil companies. And then, of course, through France and Bulgaria, which, by the way, is often the number one producer of lavender in the world. A lot of those big farms, all of those bees and butterflies, unfortunately, get swept up into harvesting equipment. But for us, we really like that kind of small pioneer spirit. We do all the weeding by hand. We do all the harvesting by hand. And we just like it that way. We have 2 varieties, soon to be 4 varieties of culinary lavender. Currently, we have English Royal Velvet, which is hands down one of my favorite lavenders. And then the other variety, which is a very, very widely popular grown Provence lavender. And it's an intermedia or a hybrid lavender.
My wife and I had the opportunity a couple years ago to visit some of the lavender farms in France. And one thing that really stuck with me was before we'd even got to the farm, just driving along with the windows down, you could smell the lavender in the air. So I bet your place just smells fantastic.
There isn't any place in the whole world we'd rather be than come about mid-June through, the end of July or so. When the breezes blow up here, oh my gosh, you just can't even imagine.
Now, in the book, which I got to say, first off, this book of yours, it's gorgeous, beautiful. It was stunning to flip through. I absolutely loved it. And you cover everything that we'll ever need to know. You've got growing and harvesting lavender, and plus so many ways to use the herb. I mean, in the kitchen and outside of the kitchen as well. In one part of the book, you describe the different cultivars and varieties of lavender, and you kind of touched on it a little bit just a minute ago. What makes a lavender variety, one particular lavender variety, better suited to a culinary application than other varieties that might be maybe better for essential oil or something? How do you know the difference between the two?
So lavender generally has over 200 compounds, and it goes from, very camphor forward, like Provence is, but a lot of the other lavenders, especially the intermediates, the hybrids, and actually some of the wild lavender cultivars, they're very, very heavy in the terpenes, the camphors, and a lot of, I would have to say, flavors and properties help the plant survive, protecting it from, say, predator animals and stuff. Other cultivars of lavender, especially notably some of the sweeter English varieties, they're milder, they're sweeter, and they're particularly forward in one of the compounds called linalool. And linalool, interestingly enough, not only help bring that beautiful, sweet, mild flavor, but also linalool are probably being more studied than most other of those compounds in lavender for tremendous medicinal and healing properties. And then English varieties are universally great for culinary purposes. Some of the intermediates, like Provence, have been used for centuries, particularly in Middle Eastern cooking and Eastern Europe. But caution to your listeners, the Spanish varieties or strielkas, which are often grown in the hotter climates, have actually in recent research been implicated in cardiac disruptions. And so we very much caution against people growing those kinds of lavenders in their gardens and thinking they can just go out and whatever they've got and make it into tea. Just be careful.
That's a good tip. I appreciate that. So I think you've kind of touched on this as well, but let's say for like the new lavender grower, somebody's going to try to bring some lavender into their garden. Is there an all-purpose lavender that you might recommend to them to get them started with?
There's so many great cultivars. I'd say that probably the best thing to start with for new growers is look at your USDA agricultural zone and figure out what kind of lavenders are going to be the most well-suited to where you live. Lavender can be a little tricky if it's bitter cold without, say, a snow covering. If you look at places where you have a lot of, wind and below freezing temperatures without the moisture, that can be very, very hard on a lot of the different varieties of lavender. Also, if it's too hot and too dry, lavender, although it's a very thrifty plant when it comes to how much water, it does like water. So if you have very hot climate, but heavy soils, you're going to have a real tough time with lavender, keeping it moist enough, but well drained enough without bringing in a lot of sand or decomposed granite or something like that.
So I'm in Michigan and it gets pretty cold here as well, just like your friends in Pennsylvania there. And I've also lost some lavender plants from the cold. What advice would you have for me to help me overwinter my lavender plants? And I've got them in the ground out there. What can I do to help them get through a rough Michigan winter?
Well, one of the things that's very important is about this time of year, make sure that you cut them back. So generally, we recommend to people keep those lavender in kind of like as much of a nice ball shape as you can, and about no closer than about 3 inches to the woody part of the stem, but get them trimmed back into a nice mounded profile before winter hits. The next thing you can do, of course, is you might want to just protect them with a little bit of landscape cloth. They don't need a whole lot to protect them. And then when spring comes, one of the things that we do is we pull back all of that winter debris that has kind of blown up, and I don't even know how it all gets there, but around the ground level where the roots and the plant meet each other, right at ground level, and clean all of that out really, really good when spring comes. Often we see that lavender has a tough time if it kind of, maybe the soil underneath is good, you've done the right job of getting it well drained. But if you let a bunch of debris build up right around the stem part of your plant, that won't let it kind of breathe and come back out in the spring as well as it could otherwise.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. So now you've given us some great tips on growing our plants. So let's dig into the recipes. Once we've harvested some lavender, we got to do something with it. I mean, your book is just loaded with recipes here. I want to know what some of your favorite ways to use lavender are. So you kind of touch on health and beauty applications as well as culinary applications. So this is kind of, I guess, a two-part question. So let's start with home and body care. What is one of your favorite ways to enjoy the lavender?
Well, I really love the idea of layering lavender into your life. It is just such an amazing plant. And so I really like to have some dried lavender around. I really love our bath bombs. Who doesn't want to sink into a nice warm bath midwinter just laden with that lavender smell and the lavender oil in it? I really love that. I use our face wash literally every day. It's such a wonderful product. The other things, of course, we use here in every possible way is all of our moisturizing products. And I think that people really have gotten tired of the commercial, artificial fragrance things. And I think making your own, it takes so little time. It's so easy, and it really brings quality products into your home. And of course, skincare, largest organ in the body, can't go wrong with making sure that product line that you're using on your body really, really delivers in the health.
So let's flip it to the other side of that question. This might be a little more tricky. What is your favorite recipe, your culinary in the kitchen recipe that calls for lavender? I struggle with lavender myself in the kitchen. I'll be honest with you. I always tend to use too much of it and overpower things. I've got a heavy hand, I guess, but you're a pro. So what is one of your favorite ways to cook with lavender?
I loved what you just said. In the beginning, I can tell you that was exactly my experience. Well, a little bit of this tastes really great. Why don't we double that? And it'd be like, I think I'm eating soap. This is just really, really a disaster. So I can identify with that totally. But you know what? I'm a chocolate lover. It's hard for me to get past that lavender chocolate, dark chocolate cake with the lavender cocoa frosting. It is just a showstopper.
Oh my gosh, that sounds absolutely... That's in the book?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I know what I'm doing this weekend.
It is just, and it's an easy recipe. We had a big group of people who tested those recipes, and I think your listeners will have a really, really successful time making any of those recipes.
Oh, it's fantastic, and I highly recommend everybody gets a copy. So, Terry, tell them the links where they can go and order a copy of this book.
Okay, well, I'm so happy to. You can either go to Amazon.com. So I think it's the easiest for your listeners all over the country and parts of the world to jump on Amazon and order there. But certainly Barnes & Noble has it available online, and all of the big retailers.
That is awesome. And for the folks that want to visit your farm or interested in shopping for your awesome lavender products, what's the link to your website?
PineLavenderFarm.com. Love to have all of your listeners come and visit us. We have between about 30 and 40,000 people come every year.
That's fantastic. Terry, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. This was super fun.
Thank you ever so much. And I wish your listeners a great fall and wonderful holiday season too.
What a wonderful time we had today. Thanks again to Terry Vesci for being our guest, and to all of you for tuning in. Remember, if you enjoy the podcast and would like to show your support, you can always join our Patreon community. You can find that link and so much more at seedsandweedspodcast.com. This episode was edited and produced by all of us here at Small House Farm, and right now, we're relaxing to some elevator music from Mood Mode. Thanks again for joining us, friends. I'm Bevin Cohen, and we'll see you next time.